How much longer are fans supposed to sit back and watch this unfold? That's the question boiling over in Cleveland right now, and it's not coming from impatience, it's coming from exhaustion. While the rest of the league moves with urgency, the Cleveland Browns appear stuck in neutral, watching opportunity after opportunity slip by. And the longer this drags on, the louder the frustration gets. This isn't just about a coaching vacancy. It's about perception. It's about a franchise that keeps saying it wants stability, yet somehow always finds itself back in the same uncomfortable place. Teams across the NFL didn't hesitate this offseason. They identified their targets, made decisive moves, and immediately started building toward the future. Meanwhile, Cleveland is still interviewing, still debating, still explaining why patience is somehow the plan. Fans aren't buying it anymore. The concern isn't that the Browns are being thorough. It's that the process already feels compromised. Questions are surfacing that no franchise wants attached to a search this important. Who's actually making the calls? Is this a clean football decision, or is ownership once again looming over every step? Those doubts keep circling around Jimmy Haslam, whose history of involvement still hangs over the organization whether anyone wants to admit it or not. And then there's the general manager. On paper, this should be Andrew Berry's moment to lead, to define the next era, to lock in a coach who can finally stabilize the most important position in sports. But fans and media alike are starting to wonder how much control he really has. Because if this search were truly streamlined, it wouldn't feel this uncertain 3 weeks in. What makes this moment so tense is the timing. Cleveland isn't just looking for a coach, they're staring down a franchise-altering draft. A top quarterback could be on the board. A real reset could be possible. But that only works if the foundation is right. And right now, the foundation looks shaky. That's why the anger feels different this time. It's not loud for the sake of being loud. It's coming from people who have seen this pattern play out before. Long searches, internal politics, safe decisions dressed up as smart ones, and eventually the same disappointing results. This isn't about wanting headlines. It's about wanting direction. Because while the Browns hesitate, the league isn't waiting. And every day that passes without clarity only deepens the fear that Cleveland is once again falling behind, before the race even starts. Look around the NFL right now and the contrast couldn't be sharper. Coaching dominoes are falling fast. Front offices are locking in their leaders, assembling staffs, and laying out off-season plans with purpose. Meanwhile, Cleveland is still stuck in conversations that should have been settled weeks ago, and that gap is starting to matter. This offseason wasn't supposed to be complicated. 10 teams entered the market needing a head coach. Everyone knew it would be competitive. Everyone knew speed would matter. And yet, while others acted decisively, Cleveland chose deliberation. Interviews piled up. Second looks turned into third looks. And what was framed as being thorough started to feel more like hesitation. The problem with hesitation in the NFL is simple. It costs you leverage. The best candidates don't wait around forever. They move toward clarity. They choose stability. They go where the vision is clear and the power structure makes sense. And while Cleveland continues to talk, those candidates are getting hired elsewhere. Fans noticed it immediately. One day, it's reports of interviews. The next day, it's headlines announcing hires in other cities. Each announcement feels like another door quietly closing, another opportunity slipping away while Cleveland remains in limbo. And this isn't just about optics. Time lost now creates real consequences later. Teams that move early get first crack at coordinators. They install systems sooner. They begin shaping draft boards around their coach's philosophy. Cleveland, by comparison, is still trying to figure out who's steering the ship. That's what's driving the anxiety. It's not that fans demand instant answers. It's that they've seen this movie before. Long searches that promise thoughtfulness but deliver confusion. Processes that stretch on until urgency turns into panic. And by the time a decision is finally made, the advantage is already gone. What makes it worse is that the Browns don't have the luxury of time. They're not a team with a settled quarterback and a plug-and-play roster. They're at a crossroads. Every decision right now should be aligned with the future. And the longer this search drags out, the more it feels like that alignment is slipping. This is how seasons get lost before they begin. Not because of one bad hire, but because of delays that compound. While others sprint forward, Cleveland keeps walking. And in a league built on razor-thin margins, walking might as well be standing still. And once fans started seeing how far behind the Browns were falling, another question became impossible to ignore. At some point, frustration turns into suspicion. That's exactly where this coaching search has landed. Browns fans aren't just asking when a decision will be made anymore. They're asking who is actually making it. And that question cuts to the heart of everything Cleveland has struggled with for decades. Officially, this search should be run by Andrew Berry. This is what a modern NFL structure looks like. The general manager evaluates candidates, aligns the hire with roster construction, and builds a long-term vision. Simple, clean, professional. But the longer this process drags on, the harder it is for fans to believe that's what's happening. Because Cleveland has history, and that history keeps pointing back to Jimmy Haslam. To be clear, there's no confirmation that Haslam is directly interfering in this search. No report saying he's making calls behind closed doors. But that's not how perception works. Browns fans have lived through years of coaching turnover, power struggles, and collaborative decision-making that somehow always ended the same way. New coach, same chaos. That's why even neutral delays feel loaded. Every extra interview raises eyebrows. Every report about internal preferences sparks speculation. Fans start connecting dots, whether those dots belong together or not. And once that starts, trust erodes fast. Media voices in Cleveland have echoed the same concern. Is Berry fully empowered, or is he being boxed in by expectations set above him? Is this a real search for the best candidate, or a search for someone who fits a predetermined structure? Those are two very different things, and only one of them leads to real change. The fear isn't just about control, it's about consequences. If a coach walks into this job knowing certain staff members must stay, or certain philosophies can't change, then the hire is already compromised. That's not leadership, that's damage control. This is why fans aren't celebrating thoroughness. They're worried about interference disguised as patience. They've seen talented coaches fail here before, not because they were bad, but because the environment made success nearly impossible. And the longer the Browns wait, the louder this question becomes. Not because fans want drama, but because they want clarity. They want to know the organization has finally learned how to stay out of its own way. Because if this search is already being influenced from the top, then the outcome may already be decided. And if that's the case, Cleveland isn't searching for a coach at all. It's repeating a cycle. This is where the search starts to look even more complicated. As reports and rumors swirl, one name keeps coming up in ways that make fans uneasy: Jim Schwartz. Not as a simple candidate, not as someone being evaluated alongside others, but as someone the organization may already be planning around. To be clear, Schwartz is widely respected as a defensive mind. No one is denying his ability to coach that side of the ball. Cleveland's defense showed real fight at times, even when the offense left it stranded week after week. But here, where the concern kicks in, if the Browns are quietly signaling that Schwartz must be retained, or worse, seriously considered for the top job by default, that changes everything. Top-tier coaching candidates don't want preconditions. They don't want to walk into a job where parts of the staff are already locked in. They want autonomy. They want the freedom to build their own vision, bring in their own people, and design a system that fits the roster. When an organization starts dictating staff before a head coach is even hired, elite candidates start backing away. That's what fans are worried about. Not Schwartz himself, but what he represents in this process. A preference, a constraint, another sign that the search may not be as open as advertised. And the optics don't help. Cleveland just finished a losing season. The defense, despite flashes, was part of a 5-12 team. Holding onto continuity from a season like that feels backwards to a fan base desperate for a real reset. It sends the message that comfort matters more than change. This is also where comparisons to the past get uncomfortable. Browns fans have seen coaches walk into restricted environments before. They've seen talented leaders try to operate with one hand tied behind their backs. And more often than not, those situations end the same way. Blame the coach. Start over. Repeat. Even the shadow of this possibility is damaging. Whether or not Schwartz is ultimately retained, the perception that the Browns might be building the job around him makes the organization look inflexible. And in a league where innovation is everything, inflexibility is a red flag. This isn't about defense versus offense yet. It's about structure, about whether Cleveland is truly open to change or just reshuffling pieces within the same framework. Because if the Browns are already choosing comfort over creativity, then the outcome of this search may be predictable. And once fans realized that, a much bigger concern came into focus. Here, where the frustration turns into disbelief. Look at the NFL right now. Look at who's still playing in January. Look at how games are actually being won. The league has changed and everyone knows it. Explosive offenses, aggressive play calling, coaches who design systems around quarterbacks, not the other way around. That's the direction football is moving in. And yet, Cleveland appears to be drifting the opposite way. The Browns finished near the bottom of the league in points per game. That's not a small flaw. That's a flashing red warning sign. You can talk about toughness and defense all you want, but in today's NFL, if you can't score, you can't survive. Games aren't won by grinding out perfect 12-play drives anymore. They're won by speed, spacing, and pressure on the scoreboard. That's why fans are so confused by the direction of this search. Everything about it suggests an emphasis on defensive continuity rather than offensive innovation. And that might make sense if Cleveland already had a dynamic offense in place. But they don't. They have questions, big ones. This is where the fear sets in. If the Browns prioritize keeping familiar defensive pieces instead of finding a coach who can modernize the offense, they're solving the wrong problem. Defense can keep you competitive. Offense is what gives you a future, and Cleveland desperately needs a future. The timing makes it worse. The Browns are on the verge of drafting a potential franchise quarterback. That decision alone should dictate the entire coaching search. Not convenience, not internal politics, not loyalty to existing staff. The coach needs to be chosen with that quarterback in mind, because development at that position determines everything. Fans aren't asking for gimmicks. They're asking for alignment. A coach whose philosophy matches where the league is going, not where it's been. Someone who understands that quarterback confidence, rhythm, and structure matter more than grinding out field position battles. Right now, the Browns look stuck between eras, afraid to fully commit to change, afraid to let go of what's familiar. And in the NFL, hesitation is costly. Teams that cling to outdated priorities don't just fall behind. They get lapped. This is why the search feels so urgent. Because Cleveland doesn't just need a coach. It needs a shift in thinking. And until that shift becomes clear, every move, or lack of one, will be viewed as another sign that the organization hasn't learned its lesson. And that brings us to the moment that makes this search truly dangerous. This is the part that turns concern into alarm. The Cleveland Browns aren't just hearing a coach for next season. They're potentially hearing a coach for the next decade. Sitting right in front of them is a draft that could finally reset everything. A top 5 pick, a chance to land a young quarterback and build properly from the ground up. And that's exactly why the search feels so risky. Quarterbacks don't fail in isolation. They fail in bad environments. They fail when organizations don't know who they are, when systems change yearly, and when development takes a backseat to politics. Browns fans know this story too well. They've watched promising passers arrive with hope and leave with scars. That's why so many people are uneasy about how this search is unfolding. If Cleveland drafts a quarterback, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or another top prospect, who is responsible for developing him? What system is he stepping into? Who is building the offense around his strengths? Right now, there are no clear answers. Reports suggest the Browns may prioritize continuity and internal preferences over a clean offensive vision. And if that's true, it puts any rookie quarterback at risk before he even takes a snap. Young passers need structure. They need consistency. They need a coach whose primary focus is their growth, not maintaining balance between competing voices in the building. Fans are drawing comparisons across the league. They see quarterbacks flourish the moment they escape dysfunctional organizations. They see what stability does, and they're terrified Cleveland is about to repeat the same mistake, drafting talent without fixing the environment. This isn't speculation for the sake of drama, it's pattern recognition. Cleveland has cycled through coaches and quarterbacks at a rate that's become a punchline. Every time there's a chance to break the cycle, something interferes. Overthinking, committee decisions, compromises that please everyone except the future. That's why this moment matters more than any press conference. If the Browns get the coaching hire wrong, it won't just cost them a season. It could cost them another quarterback, another reset, another 5 years of what could have been. And once that happens, there are no excuses left, because the league has shown the blueprint. The Browns just have to follow it. The problem is, right now, it doesn't look like they are. What makes this situation even more frustrating is that Cleveland isn't just debating in a vacuum. While they're still weighing options, other teams are already moving forward. Coaching staffs are being assembled. Systems are being installed. Draft boards are being shaped around new philosophies. Meanwhile, the Browns are burning valuable offseason time they can't afford to lose. In today's NFL, the offseason is where seasons are won. It's where quarterbacks learn terminology. It's where coaches build trust with players. It's where schemes are tailored and weaknesses are addressed. Every extra week of clarity matters. And right now, Cleveland is weeks behind. This isn't about being impatient. It's about understanding how quickly the league moves. Teams that hire early get first choice of coordinators. They lock in development plans. They walk into the draft with purpose. Teams that wait are forced to scramble, filling staffs with whoever's left and trying to catch up on the fly. Fans see this gap forming in real time. They see other franchises acting with confidence while Cleveland explains why it's still evaluating. And that explanation rings hollow when history is taken into account. Browns fans have heard this language before. It always sounds responsible. It always sounds careful. And it almost always ends the same way. What's especially troubling is how this delay compounds every other issue. A rookie quarterback, if drafted, will arrive to uncertainty. A new coach, whoever it ends up being, will have less time to implement change. And a roster already in flux will be forced to adjust on a shortened timeline. That's not development. That's survival mode. The league doesn't wait for you to figure it out. By the time Cleveland makes a final decision, others will already be preparing for minicamp with full staffs in place. That's not a small disadvantage. That's a structural one. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This isn't just about missing out on a coach. It's about signaling. When an organization moves slowly while others act decisively, it sends a message. To players, to coaches, to the rest of the league. It says uncertainty lives here. That's why fans aren't just frustrated. They're anxious, because they can see the gap widening. They can see Cleveland slipping behind before the season even exists, and they know how hard it is to catch up once that happens. At some point, thoroughness stops being a virtue and starts becoming a liability. And many are starting to believe the Browns crossed that line days ago. Which brings everything back to one unavoidable reality. This is the moment where Browns fans stop debating details and start recognizing patterns, because none of this feels new. It feels familiar in the worst possible way. Long searches, internal debates, mixed messaging, and an organization that always seems convinced this time will be different, right up until it is. That's why so many fans sound less angry and more tired. They've seen this cycle repeat for years. A coach is brought in under imperfect circumstances. Power structures aren't clean. Expectations aren't aligned. And when things go sideways, the coach becomes the easiest scapegoat. Then the process resets and the same mistakes quietly follow. What's unsettling is how closely this search mirrors those past moments. The lack of urgency, the whispers about internal preferences, the sense that decisions are being shaped by comfort rather than clarity. None of that screams transformation. It screams continuation. This is why media voices in Cleveland don't sound shocked anymore. They sound resigned, like people who have watched this franchise reach crossroads before and take the wrong turn just often enough to make optimism dangerous. It's not that fans don't want to believe. It's that belief has been punished too many times. The Cleveland Browns are once again staring at a fork in the road. One path requires trust, trusting football people to make football decisions, trusting a coach with real autonomy, trusting that short-term discomfort leads to long-term stability. The other path looks safer, more controlled, more familiar, and historically far more damaging. That's the tension sitting over this entire search. Every extra day without clarity pushes fans toward the same conclusion, that the organization hasn't truly changed, even if it wants everyone to think it has. And once that belief sets in, it's incredibly hard to undo. The danger here isn't just hearing the wrong coach. It's proving, once again, that the Browns don't learn from their own history, that they acknowledge the past without actually adjusting for it. And that's how franchises stay stuck, by repeating mistakes with better explanations. Nobody is asking for perfection. Fans aren't demanding guarantees. They're asking for signs. Signs that this time the process is clean, that this time the structure makes sense, that this time the ending doesn't feel pre-written. Because if Cleveland comes out of this search with another compromised hire, another coach stepping into a cloudy power dynamic, then the verdict will be immediate. Not because fans are impatient, but because they've already seen how this movie ends. And they're tired of watching it on repeat. This is where everything comes together, and it's why this moment feels so heavy for Cleveland. The issue isn't that the Browns haven't hired a coach yet. The issue is what this delay represents. Because in the NFL, process tells you more than press releases ever will. Right now, the Cleveland Browns are sending mixed signals. On one hand, they say they want stability, alignment, and long-term success. On the other, they're operating in a way that looks uncertain, cautious, and cluttered with too many voices. That contradiction is what scares fans the most. This isn't a prediction of failure. It's a warning about risk. Cleveland is standing at a rare opportunity. A potential franchise quarterback is within reach. A reset button is right there on the table, but resets only work when the foundation is solid. And foundations aren't built through committee decisions, prolonged indecision, or unclear power structures. They're built through conviction. Fans aren't asking the Browns to rush blindly. They're asking for clarity. They want to know that when a coach is hired, he's walking into a clean environment, that he has real authority, that he isn't inheriting predetermined staff, philosophical handcuffs, or internal politics that undermine him before he ever calls a play. Because history matters, and Cleveland's history has taught fans one painful lesson. When structure is broken, talent doesn't matter. Quarterbacks don't develop. Coaches don't last. Hope turns into another what if. That's why the concern feels urgent now, not later. Once a coach is hired, it's too late to fix a flawed process. Once a quarterback is drafted, it's too late to wonder if the infrastructure was right. Those questions have to be answered before the decision, not after the damage. The rest of the league isn't waiting. Other teams are already installing systems, shaping identities, and preparing for April. Every day Cleveland spends circling itself is a day it falls further behind. And in a league defined by narrow margins, that gap becomes permanent fast. This doesn't have to end badly. The Browns can still get this right. They can still choose alignment over comfort, offense over fear, and long-term vision over short-term control. But the window for that choice is closing. So this isn't a declaration of doom. It's a moment of truth. Because how Cleveland finishes this coaching search will tell everyone exactly who they are right now. And for a fan base that's waited decades for real change, the hope is simple. That this time, the warning signs are finally taken seriously, before they turn into another regret.